Have you ever bought a pair of football boots that was either the wrong size or just fit you really, really badly? Or even worse, both? Yeah? Well, I have too, and that just really sucks. And honestly, it can get a little bit confusing at times because all the brands seems to use different sizing logics and it's a jungle. Sometimes you think it works and it really doesn't. But today, hopefully at least, I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna give you some tools to, well, more or less all the time, get the right size and the right fit. And actually, it's easier than you think. Okay, first, let's talk about these two things, size and fit. So when I talk about the size in this video, I'm gonna be referencing the length of the boot. And that's because the length is also what all the size numbers you see on the label on the box and inside your boots are indicating. So size is when I talk about the length. When I talk about the fit though, I'm gonna be talking about the general width of the boot, but also the shape and the width of the heel. I'm gonna be talking about the height and the width of the toe box, and of course also the tongue construction. What's it like in the tongue area? But we're gonna save that for a little bit because first, you have to know your right size. And here's the problem. See, the brands that make football boots, they don't use the same sizing logic. I mean, it should be some sort of international law, right? It would be much more easy and consistent if there was just a universal way to measure shoes that everyone would be using. But that's not the case. If I go and get a pair of boots in my regular size Euro 40, that's the rule of thumb, I need that in most cases. If I get that in, let's say, Nike, Adidas, and Puma, in Nike, my Euro 40 is a US 7, UK 6, Japan 25. If I go and get the same Euro 40 in Adidas, which is also what I use ideally, then it would be a US 7, Japan 25, Euro 40, but a UK 6.5. Meaning that if I go by my Europe size, my US size, or my Japan size in these two, I'm fine. But if I'm in the UK and I go from Nike to Adidas, I go with my UK 6, and buy the same boot in Adi, I get half a size too small. So that's the problem. What's even funnier is that if you take my Puma Ultras here, which is the size I use, that is a US 7, UK 6, Japan 25, but a Europe 39. So that's just 3 brands. It gets more confusing the more brands you look at. And yes, there is some sort of consistency, but also there's not. And that's confusing. But here's a trick that I've learned over the years, and that is that actually you shouldn't be looking at your Europe or US or UK sizes when you try and find the right size. Instead, you should be looking at the Japanese sizing, because the brilliant thing about the Japanese sizing is that they measure in millimeters and centimeters. And that's good, because that means that you can actually measure your foot. Let's say mine is just shy of 25 centimeters, and that's a very logical indication that I should go for Japanese size 25 centimeters. Instead of saying, 25 centimeters, that corresponds to a UK 6, maybe. Where's the logic in that? Well, it's not there. Japanese sizing is the answer. Okay, so one way to measure your foot size is to get some paper, A4 or larger, that you need to place on a flat, stable surface, and then you put your foot on top of it. Now, ideally, you'd be wearing your football socks that you normally use to give you the best indication of just how much space you would actually need inside of your boots. Once you've done that, you take a pen. I've borrowed my daughter's decorative pens without her permission, so that's that. And then you draw a silhouette around your foot. Just be precise. Take your time, show care, because getting the perfect measurement here is important. Now, I've actually already cheated a little bit, so I do have a drawing here that I've measured. It's 24.8 centimeters long, which corresponds perfectly with the data that I got when Adidas scanned my foot when they made custom boots for me, which is a really cool video. You should totally check that out, by the way. But the beautiful thing is that you don't need to get the pro treatment of measuring your feet to know how long they are. You just basically plot out the 2 most extreme points that are the furthest apart. Then you use a ruler or a flat thing. I used a boot box, basically, to just draw a line that you then measure. I used my extremely precise AR specialist tool in the iPhone. Again, you should probably use a ruler or measurement tape or whatever, but since it correlates with the data that I already know, well, 24.8 centimeters is the length of my foot. And the beautiful thing is that once you know that, you can hold it up against the Japanese sizing, which I do. That will probably be Japan 25, which is funny, because that's exactly what I wear. And it works 90% of the time. Now that also means that whenever I'm in doubt about which boot size is the optimal for me in the different brands, I can always refer back to the Japanese size 250mm or 25 centimeters as like a good base. And it works, like I said, most of the time, 90% of the time or whatever. But there is always the matter of fit and how size-wise the boots run. Basically, in Puma, for instance, I am a Japan 250mm, that's a UK 6, Europe 39 and a US 7. However, in the Puma King Ultimate, which has a really low pointy toe box that's very, very tight fitting, I actually need to go up half a size in order to get the most comfortable fit. So I go up to a UK 6.5, which is a Japanese size 255mm or 25.5 centimeters. So again, knowing the length of your foot and using the Japanese size, it goes a long way, but fit also is a pretty huge factor. And if we stay with the Puma King Ultimate a little bit, and me technically having to go up like 7 centimeters from my 248mm foot to a 255mm boot. Like, am I stupid? That's definitely open to debate. But in this instance, it's more because the Puma King Ultimate has a really low pointed toe box that feels really snug around my toes. And in order to kind of compensate for that and feel comfortable, I need to go up half a size. The same thing can be said for the Tsukito Scudetta that is like really low and pointy, where I either need to swap out the insole for a thinner one to create more space in the toe box, or go up half a size from my UK 6.5 to a UK 7. And I would normally be like a UK 6, so that's not ideal. Now also, it's not a problem for me per se, but I've heard a lot of people say the same thing about the Predators, where it is low, it is relatively snug, so they would need to go up half a size. And to me, that's not what you want to do. You want to find something that actually fits your foot. But the challenging thing about the fit is that it's something that you can very rarely measure your way out of. Yeah, you can measure the width of your foot or the height of your toes, whatever. But personally, I haven't seen that many brands actually providing with measurements for the different sizes. So you might know the size and the width of your foot, but if you can't really find something to hold it up against, then what good is it? Right? What you can do is that you can do the eye test, of course. You can take a look at the boots and see that, okay, the materials definitely look a little bit more narrow fitting than, for instance, the Ultra Ultimates. You can also go in and try and basically put on as many football boots as possible to build up an experience about what you find to fit your feet well. What kind of width do you need? What kind of curvature in the midfoot? All that stuff. You can, of course, also go out and listen to a lot of reviews. My own videos, of course, please keep watching. But basically, reviewers usually talk about how the boots fit. Where do you have extra volume, height, width, and where do they fit a little bit more snug? That's also something you can draw on other people's experience to find out what correlates with your preferences. And finally, you can also go in and think back to, have you had any fit issues in the past? Not that it's a problem with the Ultra Ultimate, but would you happen to have some like pressure points or hot spot in the midfoot? If that's the case, you might want to take a look at boots that have slightly more width in the midfoot. Or you could also go for boots that have this classic U-throat with a floating tongue, compared to, for instance, boots that have these knitted tongues that definitely feel nice on your foot, but just, yeah, they stretch a little bit, but they're not as adjustable as the fit you can get in a boots with a floating tongue, because you can really open them up or pull them tight around your foot depending on what you want. So in terms of getting that custom fit, that really adjustable fit to either accommodate for a more narrow midfoot or a wider midfoot, then these will just give you a little bit more room to, well, adjust. It's just a little tip. But it might also be that your problem is that your toes feel crushed, in which case it might be a good idea to avoid boots with a really low pointy toe box, and instead go for something like the Phantom 6s. There's a bit more height and volume there. Could also be the Mizuno Morelias or the Mizuno Alphas. But what's also worth considering is like the shape of the toe box, the width of the toe box. If you look down at them from above and it looks like really narrow and pointy, that might actually squeeze your toes together, so some are overlapping the others, and that can also make them feel crushed. In which case, it would be a good idea to take a look at something with a wider toe box, like the Skechers boots or the Copa Icon. And there are many more like these out there. It's about comfort here, what feels good. Also, if you have a slightly narrow heel like myself, it's a good idea to understand how the heel fits. Is it on the slightly tighter, more narrow side, so it really hugs your foot and makes it feel a bit more locked in? Or is the heel a little bit more open, which might appeal to slightly more wide-footed people? Like, it actually matters a lot. For instance, on the New Balance boots, they have this lovely curve and really pinch the top of your heel a little bit, which personally, with my heel shape, I love. I think the lockdown is fantastic. But I've also heard about people that have slightly wider heels that feel it's maybe a little bit too much, a little too intense. So that matters too. And yes, while it is definitely a little annoying and a bit inconvenient that you can't measure these things and then just translate them into what you need in a boot as easily, it's just about getting experience. And okay, I did experience firsthand down at Adidas that they measured my foot and then used that foot scan to overlay a drawing of the boot to basically show me all the custom changes I needed in order to get the perfect fit. But sadly, that's not something that's available to the wider public yet, just the pros as of right now. There's a business idea in there. So that also means, like I said, it's more about experience, finding out what you would ideally need in a football boot, what you're looking for it to fit well, and then do your research to kind of match that up against what the boots you're looking at, how they fit. And look, my friends, I'm gonna be honest with you, the whole fit thing can be a little bit tricky, but if you nail down the whole length and size thing, you'll have come a long way. And then there are just two things I really want to mention. If you have a wide foot and you want to wear narrow or slim fitting boots and you think, oh, I can just compensate for that by going up half a size to give you a bit more width in the midfoot, that's not the right move because you'll have too much space in the forefoot, and instead, you should just get a football boot that actually fits the shape of your foot. And on the other side, if you want to wear laceless boots, but it feels a little bit too loose, you think you're clever, you can compensate by going down half a size so it fits you tighter and feels a little bit more secure. That's also not the right move because it'll really squeeze and maybe hurt your toes. And if it fits too loose going through the size, maybe laceless just isn't the right fit for you. So get measuring, and if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments down below. All I ask in return is that you subscribe to the channel and like this video, and then I'll be a happy camper. See you later.